The ADA, a compromise to inhumane discrimination against those with disabilities. As humans advanced, they experienced the recurring issue of widespread and inhumane discrimination against individuals with disabilities, mainly in jobs and in schools.
Living with multiple disabilities, I face challenges on a daily basis, but I still live my life like any ordinary teenager. I go to college, I'm close to my friends and family, I have goals and ambitions, but there are a few things in my day-to-day life that kind of get on my nerves, like...
I bet you never get tired.
I bet you get special treatment.
We need to find you a wheelchair boyfriend.
Protests and riots against discrimination swept the nation in the 1960s. The Americans with Disabilities Act, also known as the ADA, was signed on July 26, 1990 by George H.W. Bush as a compromise to one of the greatest civil rights conflicts in the history of the U.S.
July 26, 1990 was a clear blue sky, the sun was out, there were 3,000 or 4,000 people, many with disabilities and their families, on the south lawn of the White House. And the president was on a platform with leaders of the disability community to sign the bill into law.
I don't know how you describe the signing ceremony. We had people everywhere. They were on gurneys, white canes, wheelchairs, walkers, and seeing-eye dogs. I mean, any device that helped people get around was represented that day. We covered the White House lawn for sure.
Disabilities, or at least physical and/or mental limitations, became a more prominent subject as humans advanced. During the 1500s in North America, doctors were forbidden to treat individuals with handicaps because the general public believed that disabilities and/or deformations were a side effect of being possessed by the devil or a bad spirit. People with handicaps were to be thrown out onto the streets and treated like outcasts. But things began to change for the better in 1755 when Samuel Haneke opened the first school for the deaf in Germany, after realizing that the deaf were as smart as anyone else. This was also the first school created solely for individuals with disabilities. In 1776, Stephen Hopkins, a man with what is now known as cerebral palsy, signed the Declaration of Independence. He stated, "My hands may tremble, but my heart does not." In 1792, Valentin Haüy established the Institution for Blind Children. Louis Braille, Haüy's student, went on to invent Braille, the written language for the blind. He created it based off of a study technique with raised letters. From 1861 to 1865, the American Civil War caused 30,000 amputations in the Union Army alone. This event brought disability issues to the American consciousness. In 1932, Franklin Roosevelt was elected as President of the USA. Roosevelt suffered from polio and was paralyzed from the waist down. Roosevelt was also the first person with a disability to be elected as President of the USA. He kept his disability hidden from the general public because he feared it would negatively impact his image. In the time of FDR, he felt it would not have been politically expedient for him to be seen often in his wheelchair. He thought people would take that as a sign of weakness, says Alan Reich, who presented Roosevelt with his International Disabilities Award. The story of the ADA began in 1960 in the United States when people with disabilities began to challenge the social and physical barriers that excluded them from their communities. Authorities were in a frenzy due to protests which popped up all around the nation. The first draft of the ADA was created by Robert L. Bergdorf, who was born with polio, leaving him with a lame left arm. When he began working at a construction site, his contractor told him, "I don't want any cripples on the job." Bergdorf then pursued a career in law and found himself working in the disability field. The NCD is a group that advises the President and Congress on matters that include individuals with disabilities. The NCD was founded in 1978 and embodied what the future of the ADA would become. This group played a key role in the creation of the ADA. When the NCD asked Bergdorf to write the first draft of the ADA, he did not know that what he was writing would later be one of the most important civil rights laws in the USA. But America has Bergdorf to thank for the compromise to this overwhelming conflict of discrimination. As Bergdorf famously said, there is no greater disability than the ability to not see someone as more than they appear.
Upon a report by the National Council on Disability called Writing the ADA. It's on the NCD websites and copies have been provided to members of Congress. I was lucky enough to get to be the principal author for the Council of that report.
The creation of the ADA helped to solve what was an overwhelming conflict and was a compromise to one of the greatest civil rights conflicts in the history of the United States. Prior to the creation of the ADA, in 1984, Donna Walton was fired because of her disability. Since Walton had a prosthetic leg and her job required her to stand in one place for an extended period of time, she requested short breaks so she could sit down for a while. Her employers would not allow this, and soon after that, Walton was fired. The ADA was put in place to solve conflicts such as this one. I am a woman first, an amputee second, and a person with a disability last, she said. She's now speaking up and supporting amputees.
I dream of stars, but instead of striving to be a famous singer or dancer, I'm now on a mission to bring out the star in others by providing lessons of empowerment for achieving goals and greatness.
This is Crystal Perry, who has dwarfism, yet she leads a normal life with less discrimination because of the ADA. The ADA allowed her to get a job at a private law firm, helping others to get accommodations with support of the ADA.
My name is Crystal Perry, and I have been practicing in disability rights since 2001. If I could change one thing about the Americans with Disabilities Act, I would change the fact that it is even needed. The fact that we have a law that is in place to protect people with disabilities means that their rights are not being protected already, and that hurts my heart.
Leslie Lipson is a civil rights disability advocate for children who attend school and are segregated because of their disability. She also has a considerable amount of knowledge about the ADA, a key tool in helping kids.
The ADA has been incredibly impactful. When I grew up and went to school, I didn't see people with disabilities at school. I didn't see people with disabilities in many places in the public world. Many buildings weren't accessible, many programs weren't accessible. We need to make sure that within our planning processes and within our laws and culture that we are proactively thinking about ways to include and offer the same programmatic goods and services to people with disabilities as people without disabilities.
After the creation of the ADA, many changes were implemented. Curbs were cut for those with wheelchairs, phone companies began helping the mute and the deaf, and transportation was modified. There is still discrimination against those with disabilities, and there most likely will always be, but the ADA has made it much easier for those with disabilities. Also, the ADA is constantly adding amendments for the benefit of those with disabilities. The ADA Amendment Act of 2008 helped to redefine the term of disability for those with non-physical disabilities that couldn't immediately be identified. America isn't the only country joining the disability civil rights movement. Sweden also has a disability act known as the Discrimination Act, and Japan and France are known for having the best steady income for those with disabilities when they can't work. Ginny Martyr, an expert in statistics and disabilities, says that in the past 20 years, the employment rate of those with disabilities has barely gone up, which is unacceptable because the ADA had little to no impact in this area. Also, any businesses without federal funding can refuse the business of those with disabilities. This direct quote from the ADA proves it. No otherwise qualified handicapped individuals in the United States shall solely by reason of this handicap be excluded from the participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination of any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Stella Young, who had to use a wheelchair because of her disability, said, that quote, the only disability in life is a bad attitude, it's just not true. No amount of smiling at a flight of stairs has ever made it turn into a ramp. Never. Smiling at a television screen isn't going to make closed captions appear for people who are deaf. No amount of standing in the middle of a bookshop and radiating a positive attitude is going to turn all those books into Braille. It's just not going to happen.
I really want to live in a world where disability is not the exception but the norm. I want to live in a world where we don't have such low expectations of disabled people that we are congratulated for getting out of bed and remembering our own names in the morning. I want to live in a world where we value genuine achievement for disabled people.
We need the ADA to continue to help people throughout the USA. This compromise is a fundamental tool for people with disabilities and helps reduce discrimination against those with disabilities. But the worst thing about a disability is that people see it before they see who the person truly is.
That no matter what your circumstance in life, that you must know and believe that you have the capacity to tap into your inner spirit, that you have the capacity to reconstruct an amputated spirit, that you have the capacity to transform your strengths into compelling power, and you can use this power to enliven your spirit, to dream, to reach, and to win.